Welcome to Canada's podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Phil Bliss, founder and CEO of Canada's podcast, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto. Today we're going to meet an Ontario-based CEO, Zameer Rizvi of Odesso. He's got a great entrepreneurial story. Patient care has been deeply neglected as our healthcare systems are overburdened and underfunded. Zameer recognized this and realized he had to do something, and he launched Odesso in 2017. Odesso helps healthcare providers shift focus back to the patient by alleviating operational challenges. The company powers some of the most notable players in North America's healthcare industry today. So let's find out why he started the company, where it's at, and how he's helping to solve one of America's biggest challenges today. So Zameer, what I'm interested in right away is why you started Odesso instead of starting another new venture.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, Phil, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and being representing, various Canadian entrepreneurs. Really appreciate what you do here. Odesso started in 2017, and prior to that, I had founded a company called BPM Group. BPM Group, what it stands for is Business Process Management. My background, both educationally, spiritually, and emotionally, is in the aspect of streamlining everything I can possibly get my hands on. And so if there's anything that is being done manually, if there's anything that is a daily grind of getting from point A to point B, and we're repeating that day to day, if there's anything that's administrative, that is being done, that becomes a focus of my attention. And I always like to improve that from just an re-engineering, process engineering standpoint. I went to school in Canada at the University of Western Ontario in London. I graduated with electrical engineering, and that's really got even more and more ingrained in me as I went through school. I don't like to see manual processes, repetitive, administrative, low-level tasks, and the beautiful time of human beings spent doing that, right? When we have so many technological advances out there. Now, it's really good for me in my career. It hasn't really posed that well in my personal life because it lends itself to a little OCD behavior, if you ask my two ex-wives now. But in terms of the engineering passion, it's really paid off for me. When I founded my first company, it was more around consulting, process re-engineering, finding more efficiencies. If you're familiar with the Six Sigma school of thought, being able to parameterize a lot of different human behaviors and system behaviors, and then bring them into a more modern, technologically savvy system. That's where I focused in on. We just did consulting. We were consultants, so we'd get different bids. We'd go out and fight for RFPs. We'd go out and fight for new bids, and we'd win them. And we grew to a large team of engineers, like-minded engineers in the process efficiency area, and won some good contracts in oil and gas, manufacturing, insurance, financial, tech, banks, etc. And what we noticed over the 5 years or so of doing that was that there's a lot of gaps. There's some gaps in the marketplace where we found that even the systems and tools that we were implementing as subcontractors and contractors were just being implemented to conduct repetitive processes. Instead of a human doing it, now we have systems doing these repetitive processes, which is a good thing, which is great. However, the real power of innovation was really in creating a system of tools and agents that are able to assist in actually improving processes and being intelligent about it, and not just doing the same old repetitive work over and over again. And so Odesso was founded on that intention and that premise. It's the best decision that I made back in 2017 because with that innovation and that innovative mindset, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. In the 5 years prior to starting Odesso, healthcare was the hardest business to implement newer technologies, more modern technologies, more relatively untested technologies, because there's so much of a compliance resistance and a risk aversion in healthcare. The sentiments of the healthcare industry are very, very different. And when we were just doing the mundane day-to-day technology implementation for systematic improvements, healthcare wasn't that responsive. However, as soon as Odesso was formed and we were focused on innovation using newer technologies like generative AI, large language models, and hyper automation, the healthcare industry just opened up. It bloomed like a flower because invention is the inventive thought processes really drive and solves those important problems for the healthcare business. So we're really excited about that. To answer your question in a very long-winded way, you can tell I'm very excited about my company and what we're doing here. That's why we focused in on Odesso to create an innovative product and bring cutting edge technology to the industry.
And now, as you said, starting another venture. Why a venture? I mean, you were consulting, which is kind of entrepreneurship, but there's a lot of difference between consulting and, building a product company and building a business around that. Why did you decide to go that route?
Creating a product lends itself more to the innovation aspect, just the way the industry is structured. With a product, you're able to implement more innovative features, be able to implement more cutting edge technology, newer technology within your framework of tools that you're able to implement. In consulting, it's a lot more prescriptive. The bids come with exactly what needs to be done. Whereas with a product, you're solving a particular problem and giving a solution to a particular problem, as opposed to consulting, you're usually brought in to continue operating something that already exists or build something that needs to be maintained.
Look, for those that are listening, you've got sort of that background of having run a consulting business and run a product business. Let's look at talk about the economics of the consulting side versus the economics of the product side. Can you give us some insights on that?
Yeah, to really simplify it, the economics of a consulting business is based on time and materials, and the economics of software product business is based on a subscription, a licensing model, right? And so that's the fundamental difference, to answer your question. And it really is what you prefer, what you excel at, and where you want to land on that spectrum.
Is one a bigger leap than the other? I mean, in terms of, as an entrepreneur going into a product business, is that more of a risk factor than consulting?
Yes, it is more of a risk, and with that risk, you get a lot more reward because just the way that the software and the license subscription business can scale and the economies of scale are very complex, which is why they're risky, but they're also a lot more exponential, not as linear as time and materials. For time and materials, you have a certain number of hours, you have a certain number of humans to be able to work a specific problem. With software, there's a lot more factors that go into it. Time is still a factor. You still have the resources that you're applying. That's still a factor. But there's also a factor of scale of implementing that technology, whether that's on the hardware or the middleware level. There's a lot of factors to the pricing model that's very complex. And the value that's delivered is scales a lot better than with humans. So a human, which is time and material consulting, scales this essentially one-to-one, right? You have a problem becomes bigger, you throw another head at it. Whereas with software, what we find is that you have a problem that gets bigger, you need to not necessarily double. So imagine your problem doubles really in terms of scale. The software you have to throw at it is probably a quarter more to solve that problem of double, the problem doubling. Whereas in the consulting space, if the problem doubles, you have to double the resources you throw at it. And so it's just, it's a lot more, it's all better for the customer. It's a lot more economical from that perspective, also a lot more innovative, and provides a little more of a passive income stream that allows you to push back some of those resources into R&D, innovation, research, to be able to improve that product with better technology.
Discover the latest trends, strategies, and success stories in the ever-evolving world of business. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
You've been at this since 2017. What's the greatest challenge that you faced in the business to date that sort of, you've overcome, kind of thing?
The biggest challenge is it's a great question. It's really very elementary. It may come off as elementary, rather. It's evangelizing and educating the marketplace, right? About what's possible. I'm a tech head. I've been in the technology space for 20 years in the entrepreneur space, right? Tech products. And so what I know is a deep well of information about how technologies can improve for an intention like patient outcomes, right? And improving patient outcomes in the healthcare space. For example, now when we're speaking to our customer base or potential prospects and other peers in the industry, they have 20 to 30 years of domain expertise in ambulatory care or emergency medicine, right? Or nephrology. Like that's their deep domain knowledge. And so you're taking two very deep sets of information and helping mend and marry those information sets together to find synergies. And that is the hardest challenge. That just breaks down to communication, education, evangelism. Most in the specifically the healthcare space, it's driven by so many different intentions. It's about patient outcomes, about quality of care, it's about low risk to the patients and population sets. And so those conversations are a lot more sensitive than if you're talking to a bank. In a bank, it's like profit margin. It's very mathematical what we're looking for. In healthcare, it's a lot more nuanced. To be able to speak to that, coming from not a medical background, has been quite the challenge, and overcoming it is just being real and being, keeping it very simple and explaining things so that, a general population could understand
it. I mean, you're a Canadian entrepreneur moving between Canada and the US and running build a business in the US. Is there any, people here building a business look at the US. What's different about building a business in the US versus Canada?
That's a wonderful question. The intention that I carried to starting a business in the US was just to scale with the principles and sentiments that I would like to carry in technology products could be applied. The scale of the problem. And so, when you just premise things on scale like that, that naturally lends itself to larger population sets, a more fragmented healthcare system like in the US, and more access to a capital and also technological innovation, being able to be kind of at the cusp of that. So to answer your question, it can be answered in many ways about why start in the U.S. as opposed to Canada. But the lens that we saw the marketplace through was, where's the problem the biggest, and where's the most impact and most capacity for change that we could bring positive outcomes.
Interesting. You've hit a bunch of challenges. How do you typically, when you hit something unexpected, have you got a process in terms of how you overcome them?
Yeah. Generally speaking, the process that we carry forward is number one is transparency and understanding the solution, right, and understanding the root cause. And so there's a couple of layers to it, right? It's specifically in the tech space, when you're handling information that carries a lot of value and importance to particularly a patient's life, for example, or a patient's well-being. There's cybersecurity aspects, there's systematic aspects you have to look at. And so the first step is transparency around it, to make sure that the stakeholders involved are taken care of, and anything that's compromised from that, either the customer base, the patients, and the clinicians involved, is taken care of from a communication standpoint. And secondly, it's understanding if there's an immediate, acute problem that needs to be addressed through a temporary solution, and that we don't understand what the root cause is. The root cause analysis is very important, critical. However, those can take time sometimes. Like, for example, not that this has happened to us, but a data leak, for example, you stop the leak first, right? And then you go ahead and understand what the root cause is. So it's understanding if there's a potential leak, immediate actions to take care of that, and then moving on to root cause analysis. And then pulling all that learning back into your product framework to make sure that never happens again, building the guardrails around that.
What do you enjoy most about being an entrepreneur versus being on payroll, kind of thing?
It goes back to the initial intention of founding this company, based on the premise that everyday repetitive tasks, predictable tasks that are being done on a daily basis, that are inefficient and not streamlined, are inherently I believe that while they get you from A to B, they do inhibit progress and growth. And that is ingrained in me spiritually, and also in a creative and career way. And so the reason I'm really enjoying the path of being an entrepreneur is that I get to live that valued growth every day, as opposed to, I did work for Bell Canada, and I did work for Blackberry. So I spent the first decade of my career working for companies in Canada. And a lot of times my job was, hey, we have data coming in from this system, we have data coming in from this system, we don't know how to merge it together. Every day we have this team that merges this data together. Let's do that, right? And it was a wonderful six-figure salary, and it's like, here I am just doing something every day because the system can't do it. And in my mind, the way to solve that problem is to create a data connector and create some innovative solution that that allows us to free up our time to do more intelligent tasks and have a system actually aggregate that data. This is a long-winded example just to say that I could not survive in that environment, in which, if that is the task at hand, even if I raise my hand in a corporate environment with the bureaucracy, as oftentimes it's like, hey, no, you just keep doing what you're doing. Nobody asked you to build, an innovative solution. Your job is this. So I like the entrepreneur path for that reason.
So you think we entrepreneurs are wired differently? I mean, you've met a few.
That's an interesting question. I think it's wiring, you may call it. I think it's just our tolerance for risk. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, I would love to sit, you know, on at a desk for a couple hours a day and make $160,000 a year with a wonderful benefits package to a whole month of vacation and meet and work with great people all day long, right? And you know, maybe get my savings, get my RSPs in line, and I'm good. Play with my kids. That's all I want to do. I didn't choose that path, and my risk tolerance is higher because some days I'm pulling my hair out, and some days I can't sleep still. But then some days I'm sleeping extremely well, and I'm not pulling my hair out, and life is actually great. And we're actually having the fulfilling experience of creating something, right? And creation is one of the things that I really get driven to. So I don't know if it's a different wiring. Maybe we can colloquialize it that way in language, but I think it's just a risk tolerance, what it comes down to.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
So moving on to like mentorship, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received that, you know, doesn't go away, that you kind of keep in your back pocket and use it on a regular basis?
Well, necessity being the mother of all invention is key. That I learned after, you know, just seeing what's happening within the healthcare space using AI, right? That is one of them. I think a lot of, you know, one of the mentorship advice that I give to a lot of my staff is just the importance of simplicity and communication. You know, you have some really, really smart folks working in multiple jobs where communication often, if I'm talking to, again, I'll just go back to a nephrologist. Even though I'm in my 40s, they're in their 40s, they have a deep well of information, 30 years experience, 30 years experience. We're speaking a different language. And so when communicating an idea or a thought or an intention, sometimes we overdo it. You know, we use some specific, you know, some vernacular that's specific to our industry. We assume that there's this basic concept that I've known for the last 10 years that someone on the other side that's in the medical field would understand. And oftentimes people think that if they talk to people very slowly and in a very simple way, that they may be taken as unintelligent or not knowing what they're talking about, but it's the complete opposite. And so I always give that advice that it's not, you know, it's a virtue to be able to speak patiently and to be able to use simple words and convey ideas like you're talking to somebody who has no idea and hasn't been in the space you've been in for the last 30 years.
Sure. Let's tune it down from the serious side of it. Let's have some lighter questions. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
If I wasn't doing what I was doing now, I'd probably be spending a lot more time with my family. You know, being the OCD tech guy who can't ever do two things twice, I tend to drive a lot of people away, which is one thing. The other aspect is music. I love writing songs, and I express myself emotionally through that process of writing. And so not that something I do that already. I do put out a lot of. I share that with the world a lot. I would, if I wasn't doing what I was doing today, I'd probably do a lot more traveling and take some time.
Okay. What book you currently reading, listening to, or podcasts I would recommend to the audience?
I am currently reading a book on raising kids because I have two young daughters, and so I always toggle between that. And the next book that I have slated is by an author who I am extremely fascinated by. His name is Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote the book *Sapiens*, and he just launched a new book called *Nexus*. So that's next on my list. But I forgot to mention there's a book that I'm right in the middle of right now. It's called *The Creative Act*. More of a spiritual book. It's by a gentleman named Rick Rubin, who's a creative music producer. And he is very interesting look on life and how to take in the atmosphere around us. And it's a very, very good book.
Are you a morning or a night person?
I'm a morning person. My brain is on fire and finally balanced in the morning. As I get more to nighttime, it's a little more volatile.
Okay. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be, and why would you choose it?
Persistent. To a fault. People close to me probably mentioned that I have some pretty crazy ideas. Ideas that that wouldn't really pan out if I just stated them to you today in words. However, I have a strange knack for pursuing those, and for decades, and continuing to pursue them until there's a way to realize them. And so, persistence and resilience in that is key.
Persistence is a common answer. So it's something to do with the entrepreneurial side of it, I think. What's keeping you up at night?
Well, there's a couple of aspects. But on the technology side, going back to being serious, I apologize. I know we're laughing. I'll give you a lighthearted answer also. But on technology side, we're in some really high stake operations in our day to day. As I mentioned, we're dealing with some really, really important data and processes that need to be handled with extreme care. And we're using some newer technologies like large language models, machine learning, and creating some of our own utilities to further that and improve it and get better. So there's a lot of high risk thoughtfulness that has to be able to be thought about and ensure. And as the leader, of our company, I take a big onus on that responsibility, and so I think about that a lot. It doesn't necessarily keep me up, but it is at the forefront of my brain to make sure that I'm thinking about everything all the time in terms of keeping our patients and our clients' data and operations secure. On the lighter side, I mentioned earlier that at nighttime, the day and all the activities around the day coalesce together. You start spending time with more family, you get your friends, you have a glass of wine or two, perhaps, right? And the day just becomes more real, because at the end of the day, I think most people will agree that family is the most important thing in the world, and friends, and that's really important. So we spend this entire day in this theoretical world of our career path in very real world also. And then the night ends with what's even more important. And then I just get excited. And what keeps me up is I'll get into a conversation, and it's like, it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, I don't care. Let's keep going. Like, let's connect a little more.
That's cool. So you're keeping yourself up at night and your friends.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's a good thing to end on. Zameer, if someone's listening to this, there's lots of good stuff in there. How can people get a hold of you online?
The best way is LinkedIn. Zameer Rizvi is where I am at. And if you want to learn a little more about our company, our software, Odesso.com.
Okay. Right. Zameer, it's been super having you. Thanks for coming on Canada's podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Phil.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Once again, I'm Phil Bliss, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter on the website and subscribe on our YouTube channel as well, and on any of the major podcast channels. Thanks for listening to Canada's podcast, where you meet the entrepreneurs that drive Canada's economy.